Give you a quick background. Besides being a cop, I was the chief, primary photographer for crime scene and any fatalities in motor vehicles, unattended deaths, homicides, obviously, any violent crimes, crimes against persons. If there was injuries, they would call me out and I would take pictures. I probably did a dozen or less autopsies. I didn't do them, I took pictures of them. And anytime you have a death, an unattended death of suspicious nature, you always want to take pictures to document. Obviously, it's a chain of evidence and it's going to be used in court, so you want to take pictures. You have to have a medical person do the autopsy or the inquest to find out how the person died. The body of the victim is the most important piece of evidence that you could have in a crime. You could have 100 witnesses, and everybody's going to see they're going to see different things. The body will not lie to you. It can't speak to you, but it can tell you more about the crime than a witness who actually saw it. So the premise is maintain the chain of custody of that body. Don't let anybody mess with it until it can be examined medically to determine the cause of death. The president's car arrived within about 5 minutes after the shooting at Parkland Hospital. Parkland Hospital was at that time one of the top trauma centers in the state of Texas. And it happened to be less than 5 miles away from the motorcade, or when the shot took place. These guys, many of them we've talked to. I have never talked to Dr. Gustafson or Dr. Duke, but Carrico passed away. But I've spoken to Dr. McClellan, Dr. Cyrus, Dr. Jones, Dr. Crenshaw, Dr. Peters, Dr. Saylor, and Dr. Delaney. I've talked to all those guys. They all said the same thing. Normal day, we got a call, go down to the emergency room, president was being brought in. This is trauma room 1. You can't go to it now because it's been remodeled. It's a whole new wing in the hospital. But this room, to give you an idea, is probably no bigger than from that table. If you would cut that off, that trauma room 1 is no bigger than this room, right here, this little space. Imagine 25 people in there, medical people, Secret Service agents with guns drawn, the victim and the victim's wife, all in that small little room trying to save the man's life. People were handing stuff over the top of people. People were, they couldn't move. They were stuck where they were. This is a schematic that Dr. McClellan did for us of where everybody was in the room. The president's personal physician, when he showed up, he couldn't get close to the table, but here's all these doctors, nurses. This is nurse, doctors. President's head is here. Body's laying out prone on his back. They cut his clothes off, strip him naked, saw a small puncture wound in the throat from the front, anterior, posterior, and they realized that was thought that was a gunshot because it had a small, round entrance puncture about the size of a number 2 pencil. Dr. Carrico, Dr. McClellan, Dr. Jones, Dr. Perry, Dr. Peters, all the doctors who actually physically touched the man said that hole was perfectly round and the skin was inward, and we all assumed, without saying it, that was a puncture wound from an entrance hole. This is Dallas, Texas in 1963. These people have seen gunshot wounds, I am sure, more than one time before that. So they know what they're talking about. Just give you a quick ballistic lessons, no matter what you pick. Gelatin, a person, piece of drywall, the bullet's going to go in small, it's going to come out big. Has to. The kinetic energy in front of that bullet pushes all that energy and whatever's in front of it out the smallest and closest place to get out. So it goes in small, comes out big. That's all you got to remember. I'm not going to read all this to you, but it's important to know that Dr. Perry, the senior surgeon, said Mr. Kennedy had a massive gaping wound in the back and the right side of his head. The back and right side of his head. Clint Hill, who was on top of the car, looking down into the car, said that the time that he got on the car until they got to the hospital, he looked down on the back of the president's head, and the size of a small grapefruit was missing in this area. That's all they saw, because the president was laying prone on his chest the whole way to the hospital. Back of the head was gone. When he testified to the government, he says, I noticed a large wound in the right posterior cranium. I'm not a medical person, but if you want to read a medical dictionary before you start reading their testimony, you need to know what they're talking about. Posterior is the back, cranium is the skull, right, obviously, is right and left, so right posterior cranium. Are you all with me so far? It's pretty simple. Basic math, or basic medical 101. Dr. Clark says the wound in the skull was in the occipital region of the skull, occipital, parietal, temporal, same thing on both sides. The president was bleeding profusely from the back of the head, the large wound beginning in the right occipital extending to the parietal, from here to here. You all with me so far? It's important that you say, if you're not, because I need to clarify it. Dr. Jones, who we've talked to, said the large defect in the backside of the, by the way, I asked the video, whoever did this video asked him, you know, where are you talking about? And he sees where he's talking about, right rear. The wound appeared to be an exit wound in the posterior portion of the skull. Posterior, occipital, parietal. Right posterior cranium. That's all the same thing. They're the same place. Dr. Carrico, the skull wound had an avulsed, mashed calvarium with shredded brain tissue. The wound was located in the occipital parietal area of the skull, here. These people are saying the same dang thing. Interviewed Dr. Peters. Notice there was a large defect in the occipital, right rear, 7 centimeters, that's about 5.5 inches. Right occipital parietal, large defect in the head. The first thing I noticed, he's talking about back over here, but he wasn't in the room that long, but that's okay. Dr. Saylor is one of the only doctors who said that the wound moved. He remembered it originally is here, and then after he thought about it, it was over here. It didn't move, it just maybe that was your impression. Dr. McClellan, Casey and I and David have talked to him many times. Great, he doesn't look too good. And we saw him in Dallas last year. He's pointing to the same place. I mean, all these, and he drew this picture, gave it to the Warren Commission, and said, this is what I remember. Dr. Crenshaw said the same thing. Size of a baseball. Cerebellum was hanging out. Cerebellum is way deep down into the spinal column where it comes into your brain. Way down in the deep part, so that the hole was big enough he could look down and see the cerebellum. Yeah. Handwritten notes. Right occipital parietal area was exit, small tangential, also from the front right side. The nurse. I saw the head wound was localized in the rear of the president's skull. It was lying face up. There was a massive wound at the back of the head, not the top. That's pretty consistent. Now, if you're on the jury, and every one of these doctors comes in, I'm board certified, this, that, and this, I saw the patient, this is what I saw. Would you give that pretty good, I mean, are they lying? They have no reason to lie. Aubrey Wright, guy that actually physically picked up, he's a O'Neill Funeral Home. He was called to put the body of the president in the coffin. He said the back of the head was gone, almost in the middle of the back right side of the head. He's a civilian. That's what he saw. So this picture on the left is a computer-generated version of what the head looked like based on what those people said. Everybody that we showed those pictures to said, looked just like that. Dr. McClellan's drawing almost mirrors that generated picture. There's where the skull is, there's where the occipital area is in the lower right part of the head. Both sides, occipital left and right. The neck wound, 2 wounds, a small entrance wound in the Adam's apple. It struck him at the necktie knot. It entered the neck in the front, but our shooter, according to government, was behind and high up in the air. Either the shooter was not in the high up in the air in the rear, or somebody else was shooting at the man. You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure that out. It says, the president was facing an assassin when he was shot in the throat. That's pretty darn clear. You know, the government sent Secret Service agents down to the Parkland Hospital a couple months later and made them change their testimony? You didn't really see that. Because your family might get hurt if you said that. You can't tell a doctor what he saw unless you were there. Entrance wound in the neck appeared to be coming at him. Dr. McClellan, the neck wound did appear to be an entrance wound. Dr. Jones, the wound I saw in the neck was definitely a wound of entrance. No doubt, Crenshaw, no doubt in my mind, the bullet entered his neck from the front. Small opening about the diameter of a pencil, the midline of his throat. Are they all smoking dope and they all hallucinate these things? I think they're seeing what they saw. There's a pencil drawing of what they saw. When they took his shirt off, and his undershirt, and the back brace, there was, according to one of the doctors, he was in agonal distress. You could see bubbles coming out of the hole, which meant that there's a lung puncture issue. So they made an incision with a scalpel. Dr. Perry took a scalpel, he made an incision laterally across that existing hole, and inserted an endotracheal tube.
How could there have been a lung puncture?
There was bubbling blood coming out of somewhere. They didn't worry about that. They were more trying to save, you know.
But the bullet didn't like hit a bone, go down, or fragments?
It could have.
But there was an exit wound too, right?
We'll look at that in just a second. So this was where they put the endotracheal tube down and hooked it up to a pure oxygen machine and continued to pump pump air into him. In the back of the coat, 5 inches down from the top of the collar line, 2 inches to the right of the spine, there was a hole. There was a tear of some kind. The doctors aren't even seeing that. The nurses were stripping the clothes off. They're trying to do other medical procedures. They don't even see this until later. Outside Parkland Hospital, that's a crime scene. That car is a crime scene. It's a mobile crime scene. This picture, I didn't have the time to put all the pictures in here. I just wanted to show you. They put the bubble top, the plexiglass top, was in the trunk in pieces, and the Secret Service agent and Dallas police motorcycle officer, I don't know who he is, it doesn't matter, helped him put this thing back on the car so nobody could look in the car. This is Agent Kinney, I believe, Secret Service, Dallas PD, Dallas PD, Dallas PD, Dallas PD, it's all over the place. The trunk is where they got these pieces out of and they put it together. That's a bucket. One of the agents ran into the hospital emergency room after they brought the president in. 2 agents ran in there and says, I need a bucket and a scrub brush. Well, just get it for me. So they're scrubbing the back of the car out. That's evidence. You can't do that. Maybe they knew something that we didn't know, that nobody was going to look at it anyway, so what do we care if it's cleaned up or not? Nobody's going to ride in there. What do they clean it up for? They pronounce him dead. They wrap him up in sheets, put an extra towel around his head. They called for an ornate casket and $3,995 Britannia or Elgin mahogany casket like you'd see in a funeral home for display purposes. They put the body of the president inside that, and they're off to the morgue. Didn't make it to the morgue. Earl Rose, the Dallas County District, the coroner, said this is a homicide in Dallas County. I am the chief medical examiner. We're going to do an autopsy. The Secret Service says, no, you're in. So there was a struggle between the Secret Service and the ranking medical official in the county. And the Secret Service won. They threw Jackie and the coffin and a couple Secret Service agents in a casket, in a hearse, as you see pulling up to the love field here. That's the hearse that the body is in. And they carry this 800-pound empty mahogany coffin with the president inside, and they put it on Air Force One, and they flew out of town. They broke the handle on one side, trying to squeeze it through the cabin door. In 1993, they finally paid for it. The government finally sent a check to O'Neill Funeral Home, $39.95, no tax, they didn't charge a tax, that was decent. Handley, regular solid bronze, full top with double inner panels, twin ceiling feature, no glass, amber Virginia finish, $39.95. It was nice of them to pay their bills. They paid it in 1960. Well, I don't know what that is. Okay. So there's the casket. That's not the casket, that's the same model. This is a heavy wood casket. Air Force One arrives at Andrews Air Force Base and is met by Robert Kennedy and Mrs. Lincoln. You can see behind Clint Hill. He's not wearing sunglasses now. That's good. This is a Secret Service agent, Bork. Isn't that Bork? Borg? He's the big...
No, that's
Who is that? That's an agent. Administrative guy. Anyway, color guard shows up. Representative of every military service. Their job is to basically, ceremoniously take the casket into their hands, put it in the hearse. Those guys were pushed out of the way. Secret Service is handling this casket. Nobody's touching that casket. They throw it in this ambulance, or this hearse, and they drive directly to Bethesda Naval Medical Center where they're going to do an autopsy. And I do that air quote as, we don't know how the president, I don't know what's in there. I have no idea. Nobody's going to open it. Nobody's got the authority to open it. I don't know if the man's in there or not. I have no idea. Because the casket was unattended for several, 15, 20 minutes while Lyndon Johnson was taking the oath of office in front of the plane and everybody was told to come up. I was going to show you a picture. The two guys in the gang were in the doorway to go to the back of the plane. You know who they were? Kellerman and Greer.
yeah.
Kept people from going back there. I don't know if there's something sinister going on. It's just kind of weird. You wouldn't, Jackie's not even able to sit next to the body. So at 6:10, a gray Navy ambulance that you see here, that's the ambulance, arrives at Bethesda at 6:10. This guy who we talked to just recently passed away. He's a good friend of ours, or was a good friend of ours. Dennis David was on duty as the officer of the day at Bethesda. His job was to receive any dignitaries, muster a group of guys if they needed it, to do whatever they needed to do. He's a military guy. It says, I was on duty at Bethesda when President Kennedy was brought into the morgue. Several men, I assume were government agents, carrying a gray shipping casket. Carrying a gray shipping casket and set it on the floor. Gray ship. Wait a minute, I must have messed up somewhere. That's not a gray shipping casket. Is it? Okay, just make sure I didn't have a senior moment there. Set on the floor next to the exam table. I logged the time in at 18:55. That's 6:55 for those of you who are in the military. We waited for some time before a lid was removed. Removed? You can't remove the lid off of that. It's hinged. It's sealed, pressure sealed, so that no bacteria gets into the body before they bury it. We waited for some time before the lid was removed. I guess Dr. Humes wanted everyone there to observe. The body was inside a gray rubber-type body bag when the container was finally opened. Nothing he just said matched anything that these people saw, and anything that Aubrey Wright did, the guy who loaded the casket. He says, I put the body in a casket. There's no shipping casket. So what is he talking about? Oh, that's a shipping casket. It's like a foot locker. Snap lids, take the lid off completely, take the body out, and do whatever you got to do. Those are two different things, are they not? It's not the same thing. Paul O'Connor was also on duty at Bethesda working with Dennis David. This guy worked in the morgue. Actually, he was a morgue assistant. Between 5 and 6, the morgue started filling up with generals and admirals, you name it. The body came in at 8 o'clock. He said the body came in at 7 o'clock, 1855. I logged the time at 1855. He said 8 o'clock, on the dot. The wound in the head was terrible. The body was in a shipping casket. The head wound was about 4 inches in size. The wound was clear up around the frontal area of the brain. There was no brains to remove. Nobody did an autopsy on him in Dallas. So from the time the body left Dallas, Texas, till it got to Washington, D.C., somebody's tinkered around with the man's body. Am I the only one seeing that? There's something wrong. Floyd Reeby says, he's the official photography, one of the photographers that took the autopsy pictures. He says the body came in a body bag and a shipping casket. Either they're lying or they're all in a conspiracy to commit a lie and say that's what it looked like. You know, wrapped in sheets. There was a big gaping hole in the back of the head. It was like somebody put a piece of dynamite in a tin can and lit it off. There's nothing there. Jim Jenkins, who I interviewed or became pretty close with over the weekend in Dallas last year, we sat down with Dr. Wecht and Dr. Mantic and a bunch of other big shot people that are way over my head. I just happened to be the fly on the wall to listen. He said when Jim Jenkins was an autopsy assistant, there was only 3 of them in there. Dr. Humes, Dr. Boswell, Jim Jenkins, and Jim Jenkins' assistant. They were going to be assisting the doctors with, making notes and moving instruments and pulling this or pulling that. He said when he first got there, the head had already been opened up. The brain was out on the table of the autopsy table. And it had been cut, obviously, to get it out. It had been cut in 2 different places. The brain stem had been cut surgically before he even got to the place, got to the room. Now, who did that? Maybe it was done before they even saw the body. I don't know. FBI agent who was there to retrieve evidence, it was also apparent that a tracheotomy had been performed as well as surgery of the head area, namely in the top of the skull. Nobody in Dallas touched him with a scalpel except to open up a little hole in his throat. So what's he talking about? A piece of skull measuring 10 by 6, which is about 6.5 by 7, 8 inches, was brought into Dr. Humes, who was instructed that this had been removed from the president's head. Removed from the president's head? What do you mean? Like surgically or blown off? I don't know. So these 3 guys are, if you'll notice their title, commander, lieutenant commander, and a lieutenant colonel. These are flag officers in the military. These are administrators. They are not practicing pathologists. They are not medically trained to determine whether the body died from violent death, a gunshot, a stab wound, a slash, an axe, or a car accident. I have no idea. That's why they would delegate other people to do that. So these guys are going to perform the autopsy of the century. There was doctors standing by around the country by the phone waiting to get a call. Hey, can you come up and help us? Now these 3, I call them the 3 Stooges, are going to do that. I don't trust anybody who wears a bow tie. I don't care if he's a doctor or not. He looks like a goof. When the autopsy began, Dr. Fink was not there. He is a pathologist at the Army Medical Center at Walter Reed. He came in late. And he had blood on his shirt. From somebody, maybe he was doing a dog's autopsy or something. But anyway, so this is the part that just will tell you that there's something wrong. Humes testified to the government the brain weighed 1,500 grams. The president had 1/3 of his head blasted out on the street of Dallas, Texas at 12:30 Central Standard Time. But at 8 o'clock at night in Bethesda, they took his brain out and it weighed 1,500 grams. How is that possible? And you know, the sad part is, the Warren commissioners heard that and go, oh, that's interesting. Tell me what you were wearing that night. Was it a normal night for you on a Friday? They didn't ask about, what do you mean 1,500 grams? Let me get a medical book and go, Doc, this says it's 1,100 to 1,200 grams. How the hell did you have 1,500 grams? Did he weigh 2 brains? I don't know. Well, that's wrong. That can't be right. Okay, disclaimer. Photographs, if you've not seen them, are a little unsettling. I'm going to show them to you anyway because that's the kind of guy I am. There's something wrong with this picture. For the one simple fact is the flash is held up over the top of the head, but yet this is all in deep shadow. You should see everything. You should see all the hair follicles. You can see the scalp. You should see everything. You should see the tile on the floor. You don't see that. The right eye is painted on the photograph. Look at his ear on the right side of his head. This is the interactive portion of our show. Do this. Do it like this. Come on, it won't hurt you. Now put this at the bottom of your ear and try to keep it level, see where it comes to your face. It's probably about your upper lip. The bottom of the ear should line up with the bottom of your nose. That doesn't. And where did the blood come from? Is that blood on his ear? There's no blood anywhere here. How'd that get there? The man had 2/3 or 3/5 of his brain blasted out, along with his skull and scalp and all the water and all that. I don't know what the hell this is. But it doesn't, it's supposed to be up here. I don't know what this is, why we can't see this. The people that we've talked to who were at the autopsy of the president said the tile floor is not like that. I don't know where that is. I asked Jim Jenkins face to face. I showed him a picture like this. I got on my computer over there talking. I go, Mr. Jenkins, look at that. And he goes, I don't know where that is. I've seen it 100 times. I don't know where it is. It's not the autopsy. Why would you put a towel down on the guy's head, underneath his head? Maybe you're going to collect evidence. Okay, I get that. You wouldn't use a towel. You use a piece of plastic or something that you could, collect it and look at. There's no blood on the man's towel, on the towel. And this is 10 times bigger than the throat incision that Dr. Perry made. You don't want to have a giant gaping hole, the man struggling to intake oxygen. You want to keep that tight so that no air can escape. Hell, you can put 4 fingers through that thing. I think that's painted on too. Now, his eyes are wide open in this picture. I believe the right eye has been painted in. In this picture, his eyes are closed, or partially closed. I have no medical explain from a layman's standpoint what the hell that is. I have no idea. And the people that were at Jim Jenkins and his assistant said, we don't use this kind of cradle to hold the head up. We use a block. It's a piece of rubber. It's got a semicircular thing that you just stick it on. This is a piece of steel attached to that autopsy table. This is the President of the United States, people. If they can do that to him, why? No wonder nobody wants to testify. Nobody wants to go on record. They're scared to death. I don't know what that is. No idea what that is. I cannot tell you medically what it is. All I can tell you is it looks like they're looking from the top of the head down along the body towards the feet. Other than that, couldn't tell you. Don't know what that is. Again, there's no blood on the towel. If that's supposed to be his brain hanging out, I don't know where it came from. He had 2/3 of it gone. It's in the car or on the street or who knows where. I don't know. Gerald Custer, who was a radiology guy, military guy, was called to come in and take radiograms of the president's head and his body for evidence. He said when he got there, the Y incision had already been done, all the organs were gone, the brain was pulled out, and they said, take x-rays. Because what the frick am I going to take an x-ray of? There ain't nothing in there. Because just look for traces of metal. Well, that ought to be easy. There's no organs in there. That's simple. Said the Y incision was done, the organs were out, the lungs were out, the heart was out, and the brain was sitting on the table before he even took x-rays. Well, that's not going to tell you anything. You're looking at a shell of a person. I don't know what this is. There's no Y incision. They take a scalpel and they make an incision right across your chest and they zip you open like that, and whoop. They do the same thing with your skull. They take a Sullivan, it's called a Sullivan saw. It's a vibrate, it's like this thing you cut your trim with, only it's like got diamond blade on it. And they make a nice little circle, noisy, dusty, smelly circle around your skull. And they cut it open like that. They take the front half and go, pull it down, do the back, cut the top of your cranium out, pop the orbits, or the brain stem, cut the orbits, your nerves for your eyeballs, pop your little brain right out of your head. They didn't do this. They didn't have to. Paul O'Connor said the hole was so big, he said, I could put both my hands together inside the hole. Now, when was that done? I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with this picture, but there's too many to talk about, but I don't get it. His eyes are closed, at least his left eye is closed. And I'll be darned if I can tell you what the hell that is. I don't know what that is. But the photographer clearly stood with a camera at the level of the head and flashed the picture. How do I know he flashed it? Because the ear, inside of the ear is overexposed, the reflection off of that chrome piece of steel at the bottom, but yet the background is completely blacked out. Everything ought to be in light. You ought to be able to see. That's why you have a flash. You got to flash the area and you can see everything. This was nothing wrong with it. The man had 2/3 of his head, I keep saying that, but the man had 2/3 of his head blasted apart. There's not a drop of blood anywhere on the skull or inside that ear. I saw a guy got hit. I didn't see it happen, but I saw it after the fact. A guy got hit in the head so hard with a golf club, he was bleeding out of his ears. This guy had a gunshot, high velocity gunshot wound right through the head, and a drop of blood anywhere.
I got hit in the head with a golf ball.
That'd ring your bell.
Right there, 25 stitches.
Oh, you're lucky.
I know, every heartbeat,
Heartbeat.
but every heartbeat the blood shot out.
Oh, yeah.
The last thing I want to tell, two things I want to show you on this picture is look at the top of the head and how the hair is just all stringy all over the place, looks like it's dry. And the side of the head, it's all high and tight. See the difference between the hairline? It's all shaggy, high and tight here. This thing is holding the head off. The man has no muscle rigidity left. He's like a wet rag. Yet his shoulders are off the table. You can't do that. Rigor mortis is not set in. Rigor mortis doesn't set in for 8 to 12 hours after death. After your heart stops pumping, all the blood pools at the bottom and you start getting stiff from the feet up. And your body, whatever your body is touching, if I fell dead like this, all the blood would pool obviously to my feet, but there would be no blood here because that's where I was pressing, all the blood would press down to the lower extremities. He doesn't have any blood in his ear. He doesn't have any way of holding his shoulders off the table. It's magic. Complete and utter magic. This is one of my favorites. Autopsy people said we don't know where that is. We don't have a phone on the wall. It's not black. There's a phone on the desk on the other side of the room. I don't know what the hell this is. I don't know, it's a wire just hanging loose. This is all dark. You should be able to see that. This is the hole in the throat. I don't know what that is. His eyes are closed. His hair is shaggy, but it's high and tight. He's holding his head up off of this thing. His shoulders are off the floor. No blood on the towel. Here's the fun part. I think that's two pictures put together. Here's how I can tell. Hold your hand up in front of you. Close your dominant eye. Who's right-handed? Dominant right-handed. Close your left eye. Put the edge of your hand right down this tile line. Cover up this half of the picture. You only want to see the phone and the wall and the shaggy hair. Have you done that? Now, cover up the other part of that picture with your hand. Move your hand, just one hand. Now cover up this part and look at this half. Look at the tile on the back wall. There's a corner, half a tile, full tile, full tile, full tile, full tile, full tile. Right in the middle, you got a half a tile. Who tiles like that? If I did that in my bathroom, my wife would kill me and make me do it all over again. You don't have a half a tile on the middle of the room, you have it on the end so you don't see it. I think that's a composite of two pictures. His hair wasn't like that. That's where they composited, put it together. I don't think so much as the body was altered, I think it was, but I think the pictures were also altered too. That I can say unequivocally, that's President Kennedy. Anybody have a problem with me saying that? Look at his hair. Full head of hair on top, not high and tight, it's, neatly trimmed, but it sure doesn't look like that. Hell, his sideburns aren't even right. His sideburns are straight across. Those are up and down. It's not even right. I made my point, that's all I wanted to do. Before and after. I don't understand how they could think that that's not going to be looked at. All right, we're almost done here. That afternoon, a young man found what appeared to be, to him, a bone from a human in the south side of Elm Street. He took it to his father, who happened to be a physician, and he took it to Bethesda Hospital and said, yes, that is part of the occipital bone of a human skull. Now, unless somebody had got their head blasted apart in Judy Plaza that same day, that belongs on President Kennedy. You all follow that? How did it get from there? And if we have a back of the president's head, a picture of it, that at least ought to be missing. It goes right here. Right where every doctor at Parkland said, the right rear posterior part of the head, size of a baseball or grapefruit, small tennis ball, whatever. That doesn't show up. And how do we know does anybody know who that is? I'm asking. How would you know? How would you take a picture of the back of somebody's head of an autopsy if you want to see his face for positive identification? How would you do that? I know, you put a mirror in front of the man's face so you can see reflection. Go, yeah, that's the guy. Or you take his fingerprints. Well, we don't have time to take fingerprints. I have no earthly idea what the hell that is. I have no idea. And this looks like it's wet. And this is dry. And you know that it was a flash because you can see the shadow of the head. There's a flash. How come this is all dark? You ought to be able to see hair follicles and scalp. And if there's a entry hole in your hair, your chest, your head, your pubic area, whatever, they're going to shave it and they're going to take a picture of it so you can see it. And they're going to orient it laterally and vertically where it is. They didn't even do that.
When did these pictures come out?
1970 something. They were supposedly given to Secret Service agent Fox, and he made them available. Well, it's all shit. Sorry. I still don't know what that is. I don't have a
It's like a
clue.
stay from your collar. Wow.
This is embarrassing. I don't know what the hell that is. If that's a ruler, where's the numbers? And are they in centimeters, millimeters, inches, feet, acreage? I don't know what you're measuring. And how do you orient? Where's your start point? Wherever the hole is? No, that's not how you measure it. You start at the top of the skull. That's 0. Vertical, right through the spine, and everything off of that. That's how you measure it. Do the same thing laterally. You start at the skull, and you measure. I don't know what this is, but if that's supposed to be the hole, well then shave it and show it to me. This is the true orientation of that picture. He's laying on his side, they're rolling over. Look, here's his head. Well, great, but there's no hole there. Again, I don't know what this is. But if that's supposed to be part of his head, at the right rear portion of the skull, then that's, I don't know, something wrong. What do they say in the movie, something wrong in Denmark? There's something wrong in Bethesda here. So there's Washington and then there's Dallas. So they're either looking at two different bodies, or somebody's manipulated the pictures, or somebody's manipulated the body. I don't know.
Or all three.
There's a hole in the shirt, 5.5 inches down, almost measures exactly where the coat the hole in the coat was I showed you earlier. Here's the I love this autopsy. This is a protocol, standard autopsy body chart. It's got the case number, it's got the date, it's got the time started, the time completed. I mean, this is, people that use this, law enforcement, medical people, the same thing. And they always want to put the name of the victim up here, but perhaps they didn't know the victim, they didn't put his name down here. I don't know. They didn't put his name, when he expired, his physical description. They didn't even put his race down there, his height, his weight, his hair color, his eye color, his pupils, his size, his weights, nothing. But I can tell you one little thing about medical. I did some research. These numbers were written by, and the direction of, Dr. James Humes, and written by Jim Jenkins, who was transcribing what Humes tells him, and he wrote the numbers down. Well, either Dr. Humes mislabeled or mismeasured or misweighed the spleen, 90-gram spleen, no wonder the man died. 90 grams is about like this big. Your spleen is the second largest organ in your abdominal cavity. It's about that big. It wraps around the entire left side and the front of your stomach. 90 grams? This is probably 90 grams or less. So the numbers are wrong. And nobody signed it. Well, that's no good in legal court. I'm not putting my name on that. That's what they probably said, I put my name on that thing. Nobody knows who did it. And these stains are supposedly blood from President Kennedy. So Humes, later, a couple days later, was transcribing his notes and burned his original notes, threw them in the fireplace. You can't do that. This is a government investigation. You can't do that. So here's the back wounds. I think what I'm looking at, 3 wounds. 1, 2, 3. Entrance, entrance, exit. Head's intact, so we'll just forget that because that's not real. But if those are 3 holes, more than one guy shooting at him, more than one guy hit him in the back 3 times. Or hit him in the back twice and once in the front, because that's bigger. Remember what I said earlier? Goes in small, comes out big. That's bigger than that. That's entrance, entrance, exit. That's my opinion. You can't take it to the bank because I'm not medically trained, but I've seen enough autopsies and I know what bullets do. That's what I'm seeing. That's the proper orientation.
What about,
I don't know what the hell this is. Yes?
okay, you got 3 wounds there.
Right. 1, 2,
One's
3.
the exit wound. The other 2,
Entrance.
right, entrance wounds, what the front of his chest looked like then when they came out.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something to see that? They didn't take pictures of the front of his chest. Well, if they did, we don't see them.
Nice call, John.
Yeah. And if that's an exit hole, what was he leaning up against when he got shot? What was he leaning up against when he got shot? What was he in when he got shot?
Yeah, why isn't the,
That whole car is, remember I said the whole car is a crime scene? Bullet fragments, bullet holes. I bet you that hole punched a hole in that upholstery. And that's why they took it apart and they drove it to Eisenhower Hess in Dearborn. They drove it. Sure they did, on the driveway in the street. Hey, how's it going? You got any change with hole? We're driving with them. They transported that car. I mean, you have to be stupid and think that that's what they did, but they didn't. They transported that car by cargo plane, and then they somehow got it to Hess and Eisenhower in Dearborn, and they totally destroyed the car and rebuilt it from the frame up. That's evidence. Nobody has taken pictures of the inside of that car yet, and they destroyed it. I think that's where one of the bullets ended up. I don't know, again, I don't know where they're measuring from, and I don't know whose hands these are. I guess it takes two people to hold a ruler. I think the reason this hand's on there, there's a hole here. There's something there that they're, I don't know, I'm just thinking sinister like that. And this is, I'll finish with this, we're doing a medical legal autopsy, or an post-mortem examination on a victim. Let's just, we don't care if he's the president, just say he's a victim. We are going to put in our report only that information which is factual data which we observed, or that's it, right? You can't just make up stuff. So in the report, the doctors wrote, according to newspaper accounts, the Washington Post, November 23, 1963, Bob Jackson, Dallas Times Herald photographer, said he looked around as he heard shots and saw a rifle disappearing in the window. They put that in the clinical summary of the autopsy of President. What the hell has that got to do with anything? That's just the newspaper reporter's account. That's not factual data. Three shots were heard and the president fell forward bleeding from the head. According to newspaper accounts, we saw a window and saw a rifle barrel sticking out of the window. No. So this is, and the sad part is the Warren Commission, when they brought the doctors in to testify about the autopsy of the century, they showed them drawings, not actual photographs or x-rays. They just showed them pictures of drawings that they did verbally based on their descriptions. That's not the best evidence, folks. You don't do that. So there you go. There's something wrong with every picture we've ever had. There's something wrong with the autopsy. I don't even call it an autopsy anymore. I just say it's an examination post-mortem, because the guy, they didn't do anything. I watched Bullet. You've seen the movie Bullet. When the guy got shot, the gangland showed him, and they had the guy on the autopsy table. Of course, you don't see that, but Frank Bullitt walks in, and the doctor's got a microphone hanging over his head, and he's dictating what he's doing, and then somebody will transcribe that. They didn't do that at Bethesda. It's just, don't do that, do something else. Well, we're going to find it. No, don't do that, do something else. What do you want me to do? You want me to look for bullets? You want me to look for bullets? Anyway, David, you're up, brother.